We have an incredible panel here to finish the day on probably one of the most important topics of the day, which is perception. You see who's on the panel here based on what's on the board, and these are the people that help influence that perception. You know, we have a saying is, particularly now, with all the great things that we are doing, we're still shy about it. We're still humble about it. One of the challenges we always like to say, if you don't see it, you can't be it. And it's up to them to make sure we can see it, whether in print, whether digitally, or whether on video. So we're going to ask a lot of questions on that, because this is a time where we got to go from being invisible to visible, go from the negative to being positive, and instead of being viewed as takers, being viewed as makers. That's what this is all about. So I'm going to start with Marissa here and talk to her about, she's been involved in some of the most important companies in America in charge of targeting Hispanics. Tell us what you're doing now at PepsiCo about reaching that Hispanic community.
Thank you. So a couple of things. We've been on a really great journey the past couple of years, and I'd like to actually invite every organization to go on this journey, because we've learned a lot. And three things, really. The first one, we learned 2 years ago that we had really missed the mark. We were not engaging in any kind of meaningful way with this community from our brand standpoint. And because of that, we were losing a ton of business. And when we saw the numbers of the amount of business we were losing in our beverage organization, because beverage, by the way, the future growth of all those beverage categories are being led by Latinos. And we were in no way talking to Latinos. So when we realized that, we said we had to do something. Number two, when we started to engage, we realized, wow, this community has changed and evolved so much in the last 10 years. We have to talk to the community in a different way. What did we learn? You know, in the past, it was this whole notion of, oh, you have unacculturated Latinos and they speak Spanish and they're low income, and so you got to address them in Spanish. And now we have acculturated and they're more assimilated, and so therefore you can address them in English. That's how the advertising community saw the Hispanic community. And guess what? That's not happening, because Latinos aren't assimilating. The Latino community is influencing, and so you have to talk to Latinos in a different way. So finally, number three, we knew it couldn't just be a marketing exercise. We couldn't just go out and create an ad and call it a day. It had to be a systematic way, and what we call from media to shelf. So it starts in our stores, in the community. When we service that store, our route guy has to speak the language to those store managers, has to merchandise the right products in the right way. And it goes all the way up the chain to our media, our partnerships, what we say, how we convey, how we portray the community. And so we created a business unit. So it's not a marketing team, it's a business unit. We have salespeople, we have insights. Our head of insights is here, Rodrigo, who's been amazing in this whole journey. We're all over the country, so we're not just in one place. And that's the way we've been addressing the community and engaging with the consumer. And our sales, we thought it would take about 3 years to actually see the growth, because we were that far behind. In 1 year, our buy rate, which is the amount of dollars that a Hispanic spends on our brand, has gone up tremendously, 4 points in 1 year. It's incredible, the amount of the impact that we've had. And it's all because we've been through that systematic journey.
One of the wonderful things about this session is we can actually see some of their work. So let's roll a video that PepsiCo has done, and then we'll follow up with that.
El mundo del espectáculo no es para ti.
Apellido no va con
That's right, here we go, people, here we go. Look how far we've come, huh?
What a great video. Marissa, tell us about that and how that video came to be and how you used it from a marketing campaign perspective.
So like I said before, the community has really evolved. And we found that the core of Latinos today is that 200%er, right? We used to be ni de aquí, ni de allá, no sé, donde estoy. We are not. We're 200%. I'm 100% Latina, and I'm 100% American. And I'm very proud of both, right? And it's that duality that we embraced, and we knew there were Latinos out there like John that embraced that duality. And so, but we also know it's a hard journey for Latinos. You hear those doubts every single day. You don't belong in Hollywood. Maybe you do, but you're a gangster. You don't have the right look. You don't have the right last name. I mean, all of these things come, but we overcome, right? You have to kind of those voices and listen to that inner voice and succeed. And just seeing his story, that's Latino's story. We succeed, we go out, look how far we've come. And that's the insight we tapped into thanks to Rodrigo and Alma and a lot of people that worked on this campaign. And it's been really powerful because I think it hit a nerve in the Latino community.
Awesome, awesome. Ciro, por favor. No, he's a fellow Colombian, so I'm very excited. You have come from the perspective of an agency.
Sí.
Can you tell us about the role that agencies are playing about influencing this community and what you're doing, from that perspective?
Well, the agency is in charge of being, in a way, the gatekeeper of the brand, to be aware of what society is doing, to be aware of what other industries are doing. Like you were talking about Hollywood, and 20 years ago, 30 years ago, every Hispanic was casted to play a Hispanic role, and that could be a gangster or an assassin or a drug lord. And you see more and more that Hispanics are now influencing Hollywood, and not necessarily from the stereotype perspective. Like you see Diego Luna playing a character in Star Wars. So I think that we are, in a way, we're far behind from that. But I think that we need to reflect what society is doing and what other industries are doing. From the client side, from the agency side, because we still have problems within the agencies. We spend most of our time justifying being a Hispanic agency instead of just being Hispanics and making the work relevant throughout the market. It's not that we create a campaign and then this campaign, if someone who is English speaking sees the campaign, is not going to understand. No, of course, because you need to make the approach more holistic and unified, whatever we're doing. Because, like you said, we are 100% Hispanic, we are 100% American, so we understand everything. We understand the American culture and we understand the Hispanic culture, and that's our strength, our superpower. And we play with a lot of insights, but I think that the most important thing is writing that creative brief And part of that is how do we feel inspired by? And I think it's being aware of what other industries like Hollywood or Netflix or whatever the platform is or the industry is doing, and what can we take to use it in our own ad industry. And the insights are there. It's just the way how you apply them.
See, we're going to play two videos from Ciro. Did you want to set them up a little bit?
Yeah, I don't know what the order is, but talking about the insights, they're there. We know that, for example, we have Goya is one of our clients out of East Coast, and basically they wanted to tap into the Hispanic parents who are raising kids in the U.S. And of course, the insight of, yes, they live between two worlds, but the task was to, how do we write the creative brief in order to create this enemy or this barrier or this tension? Because there's no tension. If there's no tension, you cannot be emotionally engaging and human and real. So this is a nice example of how we use, it's not a new insight, but the way we applied it, it was natural and real, and it came from the heart, and I think that's why people related to that Goya commercial. I don't know if that's the one playing, but I hope so.
All right, we'll watch that first here.
En la escuela me pidieron llevar comida latina.
Ay, qué bueno. ¿Y qué quieres llevar?
Nachos.
That moment when you realize
Oh, come on!
I'm losing my Latin child.
Mom, can I have this?
Sí, para tu quinceañera.
You mean sweet 16, right?
Mom, can I please have a burger?
Ah, en español.
What a great commercial. So Ciro, please. So that was the first one. If you can set up the other one.
Well, this one was about how food is a strong connection when it comes to raising your kids, and my kid goes to a Catholic, very American school, but then at the how do you call it, the recess, they pull out the lunchbox. He has empanadas and carne con frijoles and all that, and that's something that we cannot take away because he was raised like that. So food is a strong connection. And the second one is for AT&T, one of our biggest clients, the biggest clients that we have currently out of LA, and this is an example of how we work together with another agency, in this case BBDO, and we work on a big idea or umbrella concept, and then the way we execute it and amplify it is by tapping into either passion points or things that are relevant to our market. And in that way, maybe sometimes it doesn't come in the form as a TV like BBDO did. And this was something that started with a tweet, and we basically used a sports personality, Jose Altuve, from the Astros. So it all started with a tweet, and then the TV spot came.
I'm quitting. Breaking news, Jose Altuve is quitting.
I can't.
He's not a quitter. He's not a quitter. Altuve is coming off of an MVP. Latina's reading is cable.
Cable. Switch to DirecTV. More for your
Talk about fake news. Yeah, so what happened was that he, the day before they launched this spot, he tweeted, no más, I'm done, I quit. So it was this craze about people thinking, oh my God, he's quitting baseball. And so it was 24 hours in which Jose Altuve couldn't tweet or read or say anything about it. His team players, anyone couldn't say anything. So 24 hours later, he sends another tweet saying, tranquilo amigos, I'm just quitting cable. Here's this video that we did. And then the TV spot was out. So it's a good example of like a Hispanic platform that lives beyond TV.
Great story. I mean, you see it there live, and having baseball players who'd love to tweet with all their baseball teammates, holding them back, that's a big accomplishment. So I'm sure it may cost AT&T a little money, right, John? So I want to direct the next question to Elba, who has her agency and is responsible for communicating to the wider audience. But a very important issue that we have here at We Are All Human Foundation is talking about the systematic change. What do you see, Elba, now as a key aspect of that systematic change that we need to do from an agency perspective?
I think on a broader perspective, when you think of systematic change, admittedly, it's a word that it seems so heavy, right? So much to do because it really implies impacting and changing our industries, social institutions, political institutions, financial institutions, which we talked about earlier. And while here as a marketer, I can't impact some of those, I think what we do have an impact from a systematic perspective is probably more on the social aspect, right? How we impact pop culture, for example, as Ciro talked about, taking insights from other industries. So our job, I think, one of the ways we can impact change is the narrative that we put out there, how we portray our Hispanic, Latino consumers, right? But I think from a systematic perspective, to me, the economic aspect has a lot to do with it. And I think the story speaks for itself. Earlier, I know in the day we talked about from a consumer perspective, our purchasing power, which you would think would allow a lot of companies to invest a lot more in this consumer, and yet they're not. Also from the fact of what we contribute to this country. You used John Leguizamo, and one of the things that he's done, which I absolutely loved, I saw him when he came to Dallas, but if you guys haven't seen the history of Latin American for morons, either on HBO or in his tour, is a must because it truly does. One of the missing aspects and links he is for systematic change is education, the contributions of who we were in Latin America before even the US came about, right? Our history, how the huge empires that we had, and then the contributions that we've made to this country, politically, socially, so much. And so economic, the dollars, to me, green is what speaks, right? It makes a lot of impact. And so earlier we talked about entrepreneurship, and while I know the numbers are not there yet because of access to capital, financial education, one of the campaigns that I absolutely love this year is actually a campaign done by Kia Motors. Why? With Inspire Agency. Because it talks about the Latina narrative, which gives the way it portrays Latinas is shattering stereotypes. If we look at Hollywood and the media and how women, Latinas especially, are portrayed, it's in a very particular way. And one of the things that's amazing about Latinas in this country is that Latina-owned small business is the fastest business segment growing here in the US. And the last, I think since 2007, has grown about 87% of Latina-owned small businesses. I think there are 1.4 million Latina-owned small businesses. And what Inspire Agency did along with Kia is that they recognized this. And so they had an opportunity to create a platform digitally, socially, on TV to share the story of these entrepreneurs. So what Kia Motors did is that they partners, and I'll show one of the videos because there's a whole lots of videos and like I said, a whole campaign that goes along with it. But what they did is they partnered with this Grammy award-winning all-female mariachi band, Flor de Toloache, right? I get that right? And they even wrote a song called Indestructible, which talks about really how women can empower themselves, use their passion points to really come up with business opportunities for themselves. And then they highlighted 3 female entrepreneurs. I'm going to show the video of one of them, and then I'll talk a little bit more about that after we see it.
Cuando un sueño se realizó, somos una firma de mercadeo, relaciones públicas, eventos y redes sociales. Ciudades grandes no empiezan porque alguien te dice que hagas algo. Naces de querer ayudar a tu comunidad. Parques, bibliotecas, cosas así. The Underline es un proyecto de 10 millas, es un parque que vamos a hacer en Miami que va a reunir Brickell a Downtown Dadelands, algo que toda la comunidad de Miami puede usar y que es algo que en verdad todo el mundo va a poder disfrutar. La parte de la canción que en verdad me tocó fue cuando hablaron de sus sueños. El consejo que yo le daría a mujeres que quieren empezar un negocio sería hazlo hoy, sigue tus sueños y nunca dejes que alguien te diga que tus sueños no son importantes porque eso no es verdad. Siempre luchar por mis sueños porque si yo no lucho por mis sueños nadie lo va a hacer por mí.
So for those of you who don't speak Spanish, I couldn't get the English subtitles. Really, here a female entrepreneur is highlighted. She happens to have founded a marketing agency, which I thought would be quite relevant to today's conversation, because one of the things that she's doing on her own, not only starting her own business, but also helping her community. And she talks about having that vision that if you don't follow what you want to do in your vision, no one else is going to help you. So it's that hunger. And it's that kind of portrayal that I think we need to see more in the media, these women or Hispanics in general in this positive light and how we're contributing to U.S. from an economic perspective, not just as entrepreneurs, as consumers as well, because we spend a lot of money, we're very loyal to brands, but also as those of us who work here, right? And then the money that we put back in the economy.
Wonderful, wonderful. Our next speaker is Jorge Ferraz. And Jorge, I think Nina Vaca really labeled him perfectly today. He just doesn't have a digital magazine. He has a platform. And it's literally around the country and actually in New Mexico as well. But it is where he celebrates, promotes Latinos all around the country with the Latino Leaders magazine. Just 2 weeks ago, we were all in San Francisco as Jorge has a program called the Maestro Awards, which are done in Chicago, Dallas, and San Francisco. And he celebrates Latinos in different categories. He also does Latino Leaders luncheons across the country, and he brings the top leaders together in Washington, D.C. So he's one of our very unique uniters that we have in our community, because he's kind of like Switzerland. Everybody comes to his place, so it's good. But Jorge and I always have lots of discussions on the Latino perception. And Jorge, please tell the crowd what a lot of our discussions have been based upon, from your perspective.
Sure. And I couldn't agree more than this panel is probably one of the most significant, because we all know that perceptions are realities, right? So actually the reality is not as important as the perception, especially now with social media and all that. I don't have a video. I told Andre I can sing or try to be a little bit more entertaining, but I think what we've been doing is that we're trying to showcase the talent, the success of Latinos in our community. And I think there's 3 main components in order to start changing the perception of Latinos in the general market or in the general community of this country. One has to do with the media, of course. And media, we used to separate media into entertainment and news media, right? Right now, I think we can add 2 more subdivisions. One is the social media, which is not news, is not entertainment, it's social. And the other one is advertising. All the videos that we just saw, I think advertising is a very powerful tool and a very powerful message to distribute. So I think if we understand how to work with media, that's the most important thing. Now, it's not represented, of course. We've been hearing that all morning, but we need to start making presence on general media on positive images of Hispanic and Latinos. Let me tell you something. For example, we have a very important magazine here in Dallas. It's called D Magazine. Everybody reads it. It's nice. It's very well done. They have an edition called Latino CEO, right? But it's coming out every year, just once. So it's less than 10% of their content of that magazine is focused on Latino leaders. And we're in Dallas, where 30% of the population is Latino. Fortune magazine, a great publication. I grew up admiring that magazine, and that's why I became inspired. They have these, they partnered with Alpha some years ago to publish out the 50 top Latinas. And they did a great job. They selected 50 women this year. Some of the Latinas there is, for example, Claudia and Nina and some of other big Latinas that have been here. They never published that piece on the print edition. It was only in the digital one. On the print edition, the first year, they only published 10 out of the 50. So, and one more thing. I just read a statistic. In the last 10 years, they evaluated 1,600 films produced in Hollywood. Only 3% of the leading roles were Latinos. 3%. That is not even reflecting the consumer, the moviegoers of America. So what we need to do, the second step, is a PR campaign for me. It's a PR campaign in which we stop talking about the negative things. And this is not by invitation, if you will, please. No, we need to kind of force it. That's why it's a PR campaign, because we need to kind of not impose, but give the media some good food so they can publish these good stories, positive stories. And if we don't do that, then it is very natural to fall into the negative thing. And a third step on that, Andre, is that we need to stop preaching to the choir. And I think we have talked enough in this summit today about that. I would like to see here in this auditorium a larger proportion of non-Hispanic white people. They are the ones that need to receive this message that we're bringing. Because all of you, we all know that, right? So in our efforts, and one of the calls to action is we need to convince one or two friends, colleagues, bosses, students, whoever we know out there that are non-Hispanics about our story and tell them our story, our culture, our personality.
Wonderful. And that's part of our responsibility here is we talked about systematic change. So Marissa, you've done a great job there at PepsiCo. How are you pushing other members in your industry or people that you run across along, in mainstream America, that this message works? How is that discussion happening?
Well, it happens every day, and it's not something that you can say we've won. It's a constant conversation and a constant push. But two things, and again, the industry, the people I'm trying to push and convince within our company are in the C-suite. It's my CMO, it's my CFO, it's our CEO, because they are the ones that hold the power to give us resources to continue to do the work that we do. And the only way to convince them, there's two ways. One is the bottom line. When they saw the losses that we were having in our business because we weren't engaging with this community, you better believe they listened. So that's one. Number two is the metrics. You got to have the data to then go back and say, this works. Because it's not good enough to just have it and we feel good about it. Of course we do. It's speaking and engaging with us. But for them, they have to see the numbers and they have to see that it's moving the needle. And it does move the needle, by the way. But it's a discipline, right? When you say systematic, the first piece of systematic is it's a discipline. You got to be disciplined about showing the numbers, showing the data, and constantly seeing the trend for them to really believe.
Wonderful, wonderful. Cito, one of the things that I saw in the videos was a word that came to me was orgullo. Just seeing how proud I was of, the images, the family, and what it means to consumer America. As you're creating these elements, for mass consumption, how are you seeing other creative people address the market? Do you yourself engage with other creative agencies? And how do you have these discussions of why this market is so important? And is it a challenge to have those discussions?
Well, I'm just going to tell you a story because I was just outside having a conversation with an agency about this spot where they are featuring this new burrito or this thing with a taco or a burrito, I don't know. And and the script says it starts with mariachi music. And then they sent me the track, and it was, I heard castañuelas and guitars, and it was flamenco. And it's like, not only you're stereotyping Mexicans, you're doing it in a different country. So we still face those type of little details that really make an impact on the way we are perceived, talking about perception. And I think that's a problem, not only from the agency side, but from the brand side. And I was doing this talk in Cannes last year, and I was showing this TV show called Bunked, and it's about this American kids at a summer camp, and then you see that the portrait of the characters, and of course, the leading roles are American, but then they have this one sassy African-American girl, the smart Asian girl, the chubby Hispanic little boy, and the Indian little boy who speaks like he was born in India, like with an Indian accent. And if he was born in America, I mean, that's not possible. So I think that there's still. And my son asked me, why is that kid speaking weird? It's not weird, it's stereotyping. And I think that, like I said in the beginning, I think we're far behind what society is doing, or we need to reflect society as quick as possible and be very aware of the details, because that can make an impact.
Also true, I'm sure we all face those challenges. So each of us become an ambassador for the Hispanic community in that process. Alba, talk to us about some of those professional objectives and what you've even determined as kind of that professional plus objectives that you use in your agency and within yourself.
So one of the things, which I told you I was going to say this, which is, I don't want to screw it up now. It's got to see it to believe it or to be it, right? Right. So, of course, with that narrative that we have, that responsibility as marketers that we have, is what we put on the screen is very important. How we tell those stories, right, to change and shatter those stereotypes. But just as important is also behind the scenes, right? Who's writing the content, the directors. And one of the things that I want to go back to the campaign that Inspire did is that that was really to elevate that female narrative of shattering stereotypes, right? A female mariachi band, these female entrepreneurs. Also, the director was a woman. The lead from a social media perspective was also a woman. So it's also who we put in front of the camera, right, to see it, but also who we put behind the camera is also very important. As a side note, so that was sort of on the side note. But in addition, in regards to your question, along with the quote that I just gave, is about role models. And so for me, as a Latina, female, Hispanic, It's important that we show other women, especially in advertising. I know Khan has an initiative. How do we bring in more female creatives to our industry? Because we really lack them, or more women in leadership in the advertising industry. We fall behind, just as we do in most C-suites. So someone who's been able to be at that level with these agencies is to bring these women. Something that I've done is these luncheons in the past where all the women from the agency come, and we have this, I've created sort of a safe space. Obviously bring some wine, something to drink, people can relax, and talk about how do we support each other, because we sometimes have an issue where women are not supporting other women, right? Because there's a sense, I think, sometimes that it feels as if there are just few spots for us, and so therefore I have to compete with you. But I think there's a greater benefit to actually supporting each other, and so also bringing other women who have made it to the C-suite to speak to them. On a personal level, it's about mentorship. I'm fortunate enough, having grown up in New York, that I have some wonderful young ladies that I know. So every summer when I go, I meet with them, and then in Dallas, I do that as well. And then the third thing that we've done professionally, I actually did it with Inspire, was a lot of kids today that live in depressed socioeconomic areas. We partner with some schools to actually go talk about advertising, about potential career in advertising, because some of these kids, when you ask them, what do you want to do when you grow up? You'd be surprised the answers that you get. They're not aiming high. Very, very low. They see what's around them. So the fact that, this agency was a Hispanic agency, there were a lot of us with different stories. Some of us who was born, there were fourth generations, some of us came as immigrants. So we all went with our stories. And so provide them role models, and obviously talk about advertising as a potential path so they can aim higher. We taught classes, we gave them assignments, we made them stand up, create their own advertising campaign, but more than anything is for them to see someone who looked like them with a different story, whether born here or not, that was Hispanic and had reached, as someone said earlier, had made it.
Wonderful. Jorge, here, as we do the final question to you, and we'll open up to the crowd for a few minutes, is, as you have been done this platform now for 20 years, what challenges do you find in working with the creative agencies, to get that message, to amplify that message, and what would you recommend this panel, so because you have a lot of content. That's the most beautiful thing, is the content. But we got to get it out. What would you say is the biggest challenge you've seen?
I've been trying to promote my content for many years, as you can guess, and it's not easy because, of course, you compete with some other things. But let's remember what Deborah Goldschmidt from AT&T told us this morning. How did the tortilla came from being in the Mexican Hispanic aisle to the bread aisle in the supermarket? And my question, more than an answer, the question that I have for all of you is, should that manager of that supermarket should force everybody to say, hey, we need to make space for the tortilla here. But no, I don't care. But the tortilla deserves a seat on the table. So, tortilla, come, sit. Or we just wait for the consumers to come and yell to the manager, we want to see the tortillas in the bread aisle. So if I'm expressing myself right, is we are at the point in which we need to figure out if we force Latinos on, if we start forcing these and being more vocal, more aggressive, or we just keep waiting for someone else to give us that opportunity. I don't know. I don't know the answer. It's difficult. Many people from my industry have gone through the first route, and they were not very well perceived. They were perceived as, especially in politics, right? But in consumers and in perception, I think that something needs to be done and decide. Do we just leave everything to organically the American community just recognize the big role of Latinos? Or we start forcing them to see that way, and we start calling these editors, and we start calling these managers of these supermarkets, and we start calling everybody that needs to be called and say, hey, 30% of the population of this country is Hispanic, so we better make some space for them in the aisle.
Yeah. Oh, a question, yeah. So, I mean, and I think part of that discussion is why we're reporting about this, why this is being videotaped, that will be eventually talked about in New York on December 9th and 10th, if I'm right, the dates, because this really does move the needle. I mean, and here we have leaders that do move the needle. So I just want to open up the floor for just maybe a couple of questions for this esteemed panel. So I know Jorge's got one right there.
Thank you. This was great. A couple of years ago, I went to the Hispanic Upfront in New York and got to sit through many of the videos and seeing all these great new telenovelas where our great talents are criminals, drug dealers, our own Hispanic television networks. We criticize the Hollywood community for portraying Latinos negatively or poorly, and yet if you turn on Univision or Telemundo, all due respect, after 7 o'clock at night, at prime time, what you see is that negative portrayal. So I'm asking you guys, what do we need to do as a community? I know that sells. We're not dumb, right? We know that sells. But how do we evolve from that and do more of what we've been talking about here today?
I'll give you my perspective because I actually disagree with you a little bit. I think that especially Telemundo has done so much in the last couple of years to really elevate, especially the role of women and the role of Latinos. So I don't know that I agree with you holistically, wholeheartedly. Actually, Natasha, who we partner with, she is one of 3 young Latinos that have the first ever bilingual show on Telemundo. It's called Latinx, and they interview everybody in the entertainment industry. So they'll interview a J Balvin, a Jennifer Lopez, and they do it in bilingual in Telemundo. But hey, they're 200 presenters, right? So they are speaking English and Spanish, and I think it's great. Do we have work to do? Yes, I do agree with that. And it should start with Telemundo and Univision and our Spanish language networks, but it can't stop there, right? It needs to go across all of programming in all of the networks. And hey, I feel an obligation as a company like PepsiCo, where we play a major role in the upfronts. We need to influence that more. Us, AT&T, our fellow corporate, community, because we can influence that through dollars and through conversation.
If I may add just to that, there's a difference also between the programming we get that's imported from Latin America versus the one that's created here. And I think that some of the program, Telemundo in particular, is those of us who are here creating our content, our stories, breaks with the stereotype. And that's important. Mm-hmm.
Not to use the pun, but the lady in red.
I want to comment about what he mentioned. My name is Ana Cruz. I work for Gamba Academy. We produce training video for engineers. But before, I spent 14 years in media. I was a radio personality and a TV presenter. And I left media because of that pressure. Being Latina, I needed to represent a Latina that in my mind doesn't exist. And I want to tell you that, yes, the brand has the power. I had so many sponsorships with brands that wanted me because I wasn't willing to be that Latina that many media want to show to our little girls. And then until now, I don't know if he's still here, an agency, I still work with brands because they like my image. They like my image as a mom, as an educated Latina, as a respectful Latina, and we have a lot of work to do. And thanks to brands like you that support that image.
Great. We have a question up front here to the left.
So what can small businesses do to impact our image? Our budgets for small businesses are much different than PepsiCo, AT&T. So what can small businesses do to play a role in that?
Go ahead.
Well, if you ask me that, the answer, you know what it is. It's creativity. Because I'm from the creative side, so everything to me has the potential to be creative. And I'm not talking about just the creative, from the advertising agency point of view, right? So I think that creativity has the power to change the world, change behavior, change society, as long as it reflects what's going on. And that being said, I think that there's no small idea, there's no small business that cannot come up with a big idea. That's what I'm trying to say. And I think that I have a lot of examples of how we've done that in the past, and not only in our agency, but in several agencies, that they take a small brand and a small brand that stands for something. So I think that these new generations of Hispanics are really looking for those brands who stand for something, and they believe it. So they can call out brands like this because we live in the skip ad era. So I think that there's no small business, there's no small brand, as long as this brand really stands for something bigger than just selling a product.
I just want to say I couldn't agree with that more. Is stand for something, means something. Additionally, in regards to budgets, you may not have those six-figure TV budgets, but nowadays we have this incredible technology with digital and social media. So it's really up to you as to what you stand for, and then the content that you choose to put. That's how you can help to improve that narrative.
But I think that one of the big things that small businesses can do for all of us is to do business with others like you. Another Latino-owned firm, for example, if you are going to organize a party, and if you're going to serve wine, why don't you focus on wines that are Latino-made in California? There's plenty of them, and commit to them, and be proud of serving that wine because it's made by other Latinos like you. I think that's the force, that the sense of community identification that we need to create among ourselves.
And just for the final thought, did you want to have a final thought, Marissa?
Well, I just wanted to say, I actually believe small businesses are much more powerful than big corporations in shaping the narrative, because you are in the community and you shape the narrative of that community. My parents own restaurants in South Texas and McAllen. They've owned them for years, been through many bankruptcies. But my dad, as a business leader with the McAllen Chamber of Commerce, has partnered with the Latino community there to elevate all the businesses and to educate the rest of the McAllen community that Latinos are hardworking, that their values are there to stay and to build that community. So that's what I think small businesses can do in a much more authentic way, I think, because you're there. It's grassroots. That's the power in my mind.
Wonderful. I think 2 points. One, we're already seeing the cultural assimilation in ads. I come from Detroit, the Motor City, and General Motors leads their ads with Latino names. They say, when they're talking about the Buick, look at the Torreses, look at the Cortezes. That's exactly how it starts. So you're starting to see things like that happen. And secondary, we have been very privileged to have this group here to really share the message. But you being here is also a tremendous privilege to us. But we've earned the right to be here. It's been our time. And I can't thank enough Claudia for bringing us together, because she has been truly a powerhouse that's jumped on the scene in the past 2 years and really taken it by storm. And that's the kind of leadership that you see all of the Hispanic leaders come together, because we love that. And so, muchísimas gracias on behalf of the panel. Thank you. And Claudia, the show is yours.
So much. That was a great panel. Thank you so much.